A few weeks ago, I was laid off while I was on vacation visiting families in Asia.
It is 12 a.m. now in Japan, and I just got a call from my coworker, and he confirmed that I was laid off. I didn't even know it was happening, and I didn't hear from HR or my boss because I'm on vacation in Japan. It's a really nice Airbnb, but yeah, my coworker called me and he was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Your Slack is deactivated. I can't find you anymore." And I was like, "Oh, well, I guess I got laid off then." And turned out a few other people on my team also got laid off. Yeah, I don't know. I still have 2 weeks of vacation left and I'm laid off, I guess. I don't know what's going to happen because I'm on a H1B work visa, so I don't know if I can enter the US again. I don't know what will happen to my cats and the apartment I own in Brooklyn. I guess this is life. That's it. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Vivian. I moved to the United States in 2018 for my master's study, and I've been working in New York City for the past 5 years. A few weeks ago, I was laid off while I was on vacation visiting families in Asia. It was a tricky situation to be in because I was on a H1B work visa. So re-entering the US became a problem for me. I tried searching on the internet, but I didn't find too much information about being terminated overseas as a H1B work visa holder, so I wanted to make a video and shared everything I learned from this experience, from handling visa issues to finding an employment lawyer, an immigration lawyer, to negotiating your severance package. I also wanted to share what you can do in preparation of potential layoffs, as well as what you should be doing if you're laid off. The intention of this video is to share knowledge and raise awareness. It is not to attack my former employer. It is not to bait for your sympathy. So I will try to keep it as structured, detailed, and informative as possible. That said, I will not be sharing any details about how I negotiated my severance package and how much my severance package is in this video because that will get me into trouble legally. With that said, let's get started. The first part of this video, I wanted to cover the facts that you absolutely need to know as a H1B visa holder. So first of all, yes, they can fire you anytime, anywhere if you are in an at-will employment. So when you start a job, if there is an at-will employment in your employment contract, that means you can quit anytime you want, and your employer can fire you or terminate you anytime they want without advance notices. I saw a lot of people online on Reddit or under my posts asking if it's possible to get laid off or terminated while you're on vacation. Well, it happened to me, so it's 100% possible. And no, they don't need to wait for you to finish your vacation or get back to America. They're not legally required or obligated to do that. So yes, that's the first thing. It can happen, so make sure you are prepared. So now I'm going to share the facts I learned from talking to lawyers and researching on the internet. So the second point is H1B grace period does not apply to you if you are terminated outside of the United States. It is stated on the USCIS website on the page titled Options for Non-Immigrant Workers Following Termination of Employment. It is a very important page. I encourage all of you, if you are on a work visa, please read through the page. There's so much information on it. Basically, everything you need to know and what you can do after being terminated as a foreign worker, it's on that page. So please find some time to read it. It's so important. But one thing very important to remember is that you don't have 60 days of grace period if you are laid off outside of the United States. On the page, it says, if a non-immigrant worker is outside the United States and terminated with no notice period, or the notice period ends before the worker is able to return, then the grace period does not apply. And the worker must seek another immigration status that would permit re-entry. If the worker can, and in fact does return to the United States before the notice period ends, that is, before the effective date of termination, then the discretionary grace period may apply. And so that leads me to my third point, which is you lose your H1B status the day you are removed from the payroll. I learned that from talking to a few different lawyers, but basically how USCIS and the immigration officer decides your termination date is the day you are removed from the payroll. One thing I learned is that you can negotiate to stay on the payroll for an extended period of time, even if it's unpaid. As long as you're in the payroll system, you are still in your H1B status. And that means you can return to the US safely if you want to. And point number 3, if you're not in a rush to return to the US, you can actually remain outside of the US, say your home country, until you find an employer to sponsor your H1B. For example, you've been on your H1B visa for 2 years. That means you have 4 years left on your H1B visa before you have to re-enter the lottery system. So if you are laid off outside of the United States and you decide to, chill at your parents' house while looking for a job, and you do find a US employer who is willing to sponsor your H1B work visa, then you can come back to the US after they file for your visa petition and get approved. And you can come back and continue to use the rest of the 4 years on your H1B visa. So you can totally do that. But for me, because I have 2 cats in New York, so I have to come back to take care of them. My friend was taking care of them and I couldn't let them take care of them forever, so I had to come back. In that case, that's when the situation becomes a little bit tricky. According to the lawyers I spoke to, it is a legal gray area. Okay, so if you do want to return to the United States, on the USCIS website, it says you must seek another immigration status that would permit re-entry. In that case, you probably need to apply for a B1 or B2 tourist visa. So according to the lawyers I spoke to, a lot of their clients were able to come back to the United States with their H1B stamp and their I-797 document after they're being laid off. And that's because the USCIS hasn't been notified of their termination, so they were able to come back. However, the caveat is that because it's a gray area, if the immigration officer at the custom asks you if you are still working for this employer or if you're still employed by this company, which I have been asked before, you have to answer truthfully, otherwise you would be lying to the US government, and that's really bad. And if you answer truthfully, then they have the right to deny your entry and deport you. So that was what I was most worried about, because I had been asked that question before, and I was worried that I was going to be asked again, which I didn't. Yeah, that's why I was so worried about entering the US with like an invalid H1B and then being found out that I was trying to enter it illegally. So when I was on vacation, my first and only goal was to try to extend my employment as long as possible until the day I return to the US. That's what I did. If you have the flexibility to change your flight and come back to the US right away, do so, because that's what a lot of people do, and at least from what I heard from my lawyers. So you can do that, but just be careful if you are asked at the custom, if you're still employed, you probably have to tell them the truth. Then they will have the right to decide whether to let you in or not. So that's where the risk is, okay? So yeah, those are the basic facts that you need to know about being terminated overseas as a work visa holder. But I would say the most important thing is to read the website, the USCIS website, and that specific page. I'm going to link it in the description. Please read it. Even if you don't think you're going to get laid off or fired, please read it. You never know. It could happen to anyone. I got some questions about why I didn't just use a tourist visa to enter the US if I had to come back to take care of my cats. Well, there are two reasons. First, you only get 90 days for a tourist visa, at least for Taiwanese. And if I come in using a tourist visa, that means I'm not able to use my grace period from my H1B, which means I'm 60 days short. So that's why I was trying to fight to extend my employment until I return to the US safely. The second reason is that one of the lawyers I consulted told me that using a B1 or B2 tourist visa could be questionable because my purpose of entering the US wouldn't be pure tourism. So it could spark some questions from the immigration officer. However, personally, in my opinion, I don't see another way in if you cannot use your H1B visa. So I guess tourist visa is the only viable way. It's just that it could be questionable and you have less time to look for a job and take care of your apartment and furniture and all that. But you can look for jobs while on a tourist visa. You just cannot participate in the domestic labor market. Okay, it's also on the USCIS website. So make sure to check that out. And now I want to share some things that I learned from talking to my lawyers. So first thing first, an employment lawyer is different from an immigration lawyer. So if you have questions about your visa, your immigration status, or entering the United States, you have to find an immigration lawyer. And if you have questions about severance, about employment, about suing your employer, or sexual harassment or discrimination on your job, then you have to look for an employment lawyer. In the United States, they are two different specializations. For my situation, I had to talk to both types of lawyers. Tip number 2, I used NYC Bar Association for lawyer referral. So you just need to type in a short paragraph of what help you need, and then they will recommend 3 to 5 lawyers to you in like a day. And then you can talk to those lawyers. Some of them charge a consultation fee, some of them don't, so some of them are free. But I think it's a great resource if you don't know any lawyers or if you don't have any candidates. That's a good place to go to. And the third tip is severance. I hired an employment lawyer to review my severance package because it's like an industry standard or like commonly recommended practice that you hire an attorney to walk you through your severance and make sure everything looks okay. So I hired an employment lawyer, and what he told me was that severance is for the company to buy a peace of mind. Meaning they are giving you money so you can't sue them in the future, or you can't talk negatively about them in public, online, whatever. So yeah, severance for them to buy a peace of mind, but they're not legally obligated to give you any severance or any money or anything when they fire you. The other thing I learned from talking to my lawyer was that usually to ask for more severance pay, you have to have proof that the company did something wrong during your employment, such as discrimination or misconduct or sexual harassment, and you have to have proof. And with that proof, your lawyer can use those as leverage to ask for more money for you. But if your former employer never did anything wrong, or you don't have proof to prove that they've done something wrong, then your lawyer really can't do anything for you. In that case, if there's nothing the lawyer can use against your former employer, you can still ask for more money by talking about the contribution you had at that company, or your personal finance, or your family situation, how you're the only source of income for your 10 people family and you really need more money, whatever. But the company is not in any legal obligation to give you more money or any severance. So, try everything you can, but the result isn't guaranteed. The other thing I learned from my wonderful lawyer is that if a lot of people are laid off at the same time as you are, then the chance of you getting more severance is lower, because if the company gives someone more severance, then everyone else is going to ask for more money, and they have to end up giving everyone more money. However, if other people all signed the severance already without asking, then you might have a higher chance of getting more money. That's just what my lawyer said. It doesn't hurt trying. So I encourage you to try, but again, the result is not guaranteed. Next. Okay, it's about the timeline of finding a lawyer. Finding a lawyer is very time consuming. It usually takes around a day to 3-4 days to find a lawyer, and it takes a day to 2 weeks to schedule a time with the lawyer. A lot of them are really popular, a lot of them are busy, they might not have time for you. And then it takes 1 to 2 weeks for the lawyer to engage the company in the negotiation, according to my employment lawyer. So if you only have 7 days or 2 weeks to consider your severance package, you don't really have a lot of time to find a lawyer, schedule a time, and for the lawyer to engage the company, then there's a good chance that you probably have to do it yourself. Yeah, so I recommend having a list of immigration lawyers and employment lawyers that you can contact just in case you end up in a situation where you need a lawyer in a very short time frame. That will come in handy. So always prepare for rainy days. And just a bonus point, so after having my employment lawyer look through my severance, I also used ChatGPT to review the severance, because I wanted to see how well ChatGPT performs. So if you don't have money or budget for an employment lawyer, you can ask ChatGPT to act as an employment lawyer and go through the severance agreement with you using 12th grade language. And then ChatGPT will explain the severance package to you in an easy to understand way, because the legal language could sometimes be very confusing and hard to understand for non-English speakers. So that's what I did. I think ChatGPT did a good job. However, some of the interpretations were different from my employment lawyer. Overall, I still recommend a real human lawyer to review your severance package. But if you don't have the money, ChatGPT will do. But I still have to say, the two situations where you shouldn't try to save money is emergency and on lawyers. So maybe splurge on a lawyer if you need to. So in this part of the video, I want to share some learnings from negotiating and talking to lawyers and researching on the internet. Hopefully it's helpful. Just some general tips to keep in mind. So first, do not trust anyone who is not an expert in the legal field. Do not trust anyone who has a conflict of interests against you. Do not trust these two types of people on any legal advice. And if you do receive legal advice from non-legal expert or people who have conflicts of interests against you, please be sure to fact check, do your due diligence and research. Just please don't trust whatever they say. Please, I cannot say more than this, but yeah, do your due diligence and fact check. Do not trust everyone. Second tip, the same, do not trust everything you see on the internet. I saw a lot of false information on Reddit. For example, a lot of people are saying that companies cannot terminate you while you're on vacation or when you're overseas. Well, they can. Well, if they can, if your contract is at will employment. But yeah, make sure you consult an expert, a lawyer, an attorney before you make big decisions. Just use the information you see online as a reference. Number 3, like I said, make sure you have the phone numbers of some lawyers in your pocket in case you need it. Because when you do need them, you usually do not have a lot of time to find them. And number 4, it is frustrating but very normal to get pushbacks when you negotiate. Please don't give up when you receive pushback for the first time. It's always worth trying again or trying to ask for different things. When the other person pushes back in the very beginning, it's because the other person does not have the decision-making power to say yes to your request. So if you keep pushing or if you start asking for different things, then the other person will have to escalate and ask for help from their manager or their manager's manager. By then, you'll have a better chance of getting what you want because you're actually talking to the person who has the power to make a decision. So do not give up in the beginning. Always try again. Number 5, here are a few things you can ask for when negotiating your severance. You can ask for more time in the payroll system, more time being employed. You can ask for more money, of course. You can ask for more health insurance coverage or longer health insurance coverage. You can ask for job search assistance, etc. If they cannot give you one of the things, then ask for another one. The point is, be polite and persistent. And you have to let go of your ego because it could be very embarrassing or very awkward to keep asking for things nonstop. But just remember, be polite and be persistent and keep pushing because eventually you're the person who is going to live with the consequences of not asking for more. So just remember you're advocating for your future self and be polite and be consistent and you'll be fine. Number 5, I personally find having an employment lawyer was helpful because it made me a little more confident when I was negotiating. And I felt like the other party took me more seriously when I mentioned my lawyer. So although it was expensive, the consultation fee, I still think it was worth it to hire an employment lawyer and went through at least like the possibilities of negotiation and like going through the severance package. And lastly, you can only do so much. So I would say I got lucky that I got to extend my employment until I came back to the United States. But I know not everyone is so lucky or can be so lucky. And in this kind of situation, a lot of times you just don't have the power to control everything and to influence every decision. And you really have to let go of the results despite you do your best to improve your chance. I know it's really hard, but you have to remember, in this kind of situation, your only job is to do your research, study like regulations or law about immigration or employment, ask for help if you need to, and negotiate as much as you can, and that's it. That's all you need to do. The result is not in your control, and you have to let go of it. And always believe that there is a better arrangement for you from the universe. Like, it's a blessing in disguise. There's better things for you. And I really, truly do feel that way about the layoff this time. I mean, I've been sleeping 10 hours a day and exercising every other day, going to the gym, climbing, doing everything I wanted to do when I was employed, but didn't have the time. So trust yourself. You can go through it. It's going to be okay. And let the universe and your gut guide you. Okay, the last part of the video, I want to talk about some risk mitigation plan that you should have in case you get laid off or fired one day unexpectedly, so you're prepared and not like me. But yeah, these are a few things that you should be thinking about and planning for if you are a H1B work visa holder or just like a worker in the United States in general. So first, make sure you take advantage of the WARN Notices website. So WARN is a U.S. labor law that protects employees, their families, and communities by requiring most employers with 100 or more employees to provide notification 60 calendar days in advance of planned closings and mass layoffs of employees. So they have a website, and if you type in your company's name, you'll be able to see if your company has a layoff in the next 60 days. Personally, I didn't see my company's name on the website, but I know this is a law that only applies to a few states. So yeah, maybe my former employer isn't registered in the state that the law applies to, so I don't know, but if you work for a big tech company, it's usually on the website. You'll be able to see it. So if you're taking a vacation or just in general you want to be careful, make sure you take advantage of this website or talk to your coworkers, ask questions, get a better understanding of where the company stands financially, and if there's any planned layoffs or firing that's going to happen before your vacation, so you don't go into your vacation thinking everything's going to be fine. So you can have a peace of mind before taking your days off. Second, can't say this enough, get a list of lawyers you can contact in case of emergency, period. Tip number 3, make sure you know your visa. So research the regulations, figure out how long you can stay in the United States if you are fired or laid off, what's the regulation for being terminated outside the US, what are the options for you if you lose your non-immigrant status, what you can do potentially to extend or prolong the time you can stay in the United States. Make sure you study the regulations of your visa beforehand, because when things happen, you don't really have time to deal with this, especially when you're on a vacation in Japan. Make sure you learn about these things when you're safely, nicely employed and have time to do it with ease. Tip number 4, have a plan for your belongings, your lease, your apartment, your properties in America. In the case where you have to leave the country, or in the case where you cannot come back to the United States for a longer period of time. So think about what you're going to do with your apartment, your car, your furniture, your pets, and think about who can help you, who you're going to reach out to if you're not able to come back, or if you decide not to come back for a longer period of time, what do you want to do with your apartment? Do you want to sublet it, sublease it? Or if you want to break your lease, how much would that cost? What's the process like? You don't have to know everything by detail, but at least have a rough idea of how you want to handle these things. That would be very helpful so you don't go into things blindly, you don't panic when emergency happens. Tip number 5, always have an emergency fund. So, in most cases, people get a severance package when they're laid off. However, companies are not legally required to give you anything, any money, any benefits when they let you go. So, do not bank on the severance package. Also, you might see on the internet that a lot of people are getting 3 months of their base salary, or even 6 months or even more of their base pay as part of their severance package. Those numbers are big numbers. They are a lot. And I would say some companies, they don't pay you that much. Some companies, they don't give you any money. So do not bank on getting a severance package because it might be less than you think. It might be zero. You never know. So always have enough savings so you can pay for unexpected expenses like hiring a lawyer, changing your flight, hiring a cat or dog sitter in case you can't come back to the United States. Or some people, they pay for a graduate school to get day 1 CPT so they can stay in the United States for longer. In those cases, you're going to be spending a lot of money, so make sure you have enough savings to cover your basic expenses, your bills, your rent, and then all the other unexpected expenses, okay? And also, you don't know how long you're going to be unemployed. The job market has been very tough the past 2 years, and you don't know how long it's going to last. So make sure you have enough savings to go through this tough time because being laid off unexpectedly is hard, and you don't want your finance to be another thing you worry about when you're unemployed. And my last risk mitigation advice is to have an identity and a life outside of your 9-to-5 full-time job. I know a lot of people who define themselves with their full-time job or their occupation, and when they lose the full-time job, they lose a very important self-identity, and that can cause a lot of anxiety and depression and emotional distress on top of losing a 9-to-5 job. So I think it's important to have a life and an identity outside of your 9-to-5 job. Make sure you know who you are without your 9-to-5 job. Make sure you have hobbies, you have friends, you have families that you can talk to, you can spend time with outside your 9-to-5 job, because you never know when your 9-to-5 job is going to fire you or lay you off when they don't need you. And it will make the transition a lot easier because you're only dealing with the distress of losing a job, and you're not dealing with the distress of losing a self-identity. So that really helps you get back on your feet quicker and get back into job search a lot quicker, so you don't spend time being depressed and sad over a lost identity and not knowing who you are. Yeah, so make sure you have a healthy balance of work and life when you're happily employed, and you should be good. So we're finally at the last part of the video where I wanted to share the things you could do when layoff happens. These are all very practical things, so I hope they're helpful. The first thing is, do not take anything personally. If you're laid off, it means the company wants to save money, they want to cut costs, they want their stock price to go up, they want their financial statement to look better. It's nothing personal. Please don't take it personally. It applies to negotiation as well. Don't take it personally if you get a no. Don't take it personally when you have to ask for something, although you don't want to or you feel embarrassed to. It's nothing about yourself. It's all business. Just see it as a business transaction. Get it done. Don't waste too much time feeling bad or feeling sorry or feeling awkward, embarrassed about yourself. Do what you need to do. See it as it's not even see it. It is a business transaction from the moment you're employed to the moment you're laid off. It's all a business transaction. So don't take anything personally. Just handle everything professionally and let it go. The second tip is seek help, whether it's asking for job referrals, filing for unemployment. I know, foreigners, if you've been paying taxes in the state where you're filing unemployment benefits for, you can get unemployment benefits. So if you need that extra money, file for unemployment, take advantage of the benefits that you've been paying taxes for. Seek, social support from your family and friends. Look into COBRA. Make sure your health insurance is covered. Look for resources online for job opportunities or mental health support. Please don't try to deal with this by yourself. Please seek help if you need to. And remember, you're not alone in this. A lot of people are laid off. A lot of people reached out to me after seeing my posts about my layoff on Facebook. And I realized a lot of people are going through the same thing. So please remember, you're not alone in this. There is a community online, and make sure you take advantage of your local community or your in-person community too. Please don't deal with this by yourself, and surround yourself with a lot of support and love, and you will get through this. And the third tip I have is always fact check. I already said it in the beginning of the video. Do not trust anyone for anything. Do not trust every information you see on Reddit or online. Do not trust everything someone in a position of power tells you. Always fact check. Always do your due diligence. And do not trust anyone who's not a legal expert on their legal advice. And do not trust anyone who has a conflict of interests against you. The last tip I have for you is to try to stay as calm and analytical as you can before making big decisions. For example, figuring out what your options are for a visa, what are the consequences if you want to use an invalid H1B stamp to enter the US, what are the consequences if you want to use a tourist visa, what are the potential risks, what are the consequences if the immigration officer asks you if you're still employed by the company. Make sure you understand the risks and consequences of every action before making that decision. Do not rush into decisions like changing your flights, coming back to the United States right away before figuring out the situation. When I got laid off, a lot of people told me to cancel my trip right away and go back to the United States ASAP. One of the lawyers also suggested me to change my flight to an earlier date and go back ASAP before USCIS updates their system. But after analyzing and weighing all the risks and consequences, I decided not to, because I was still in the beginning of my trip in Asia. I was with my partner and I didn't want to change my flight and affect my partner as well. And my worst fear was being deported at the US border, because I have to answer truthfully that I'm not employed by the company anymore after changing my flights from Japan to Taiwan, from Taiwan to America. That's like my worst fear, and I don't think it's worth it, so I decided to stick it out and finish my trip and come back to the US. So you will get a lot of advice and feedback on what you should do, and of course, by all means, consider them, but also make sure you know what the consequences are and make your own decision. Even if the advice comes from a lawyer, you are the person who has to bear the consequences. So make decisions for yourself and make sure you are informed of the consequences. Last but not least, I just want to express my gratitude to everyone who commented on my post or messaged me privately to show your support and give me words of encouragement. I really appreciated that, and I'm doing well, so please don't worry about me. I hope this video helps. I hope if you're a fellow H1B visa holder, I hope your employment goes well. I hope you don't have to go through this like I did. If you like this video or find any of my other videos helpful, you're welcome to support me. I'll see you in the next video. Before that, please take care. Bye!